All right, well, let's go ahead and get going. My name is Greg Leisman. Welcome everyone to the Lewis and Clark Law School information session. Today we're going to be discussing the Environmental, Natural Resources, and Energy Law Distance Learning LLM. My name is Greg Leisman again. I work with the enrollment team and I'm happy to be your host today. And basically, I want to give you a rundown of what's going to be happening here today. We look forward to sharing details on this innovative distance learning program. And Lewis and Clark is the #1 ranked environmental law school in the country. So you have come to the right place. Today, you'll have the opportunity to meet some key members of the Lewis and Clark administration and faculty, as well as one of our current students. I'll then go over the admissions and application process and explain how you can get started in our upcoming summer semester. We also have classes in the fall and spring semester as well. In addition, we want to hear from you. At the end of the session today, we'll be taking your questions. And if you hover your mouse over the bottom of the Zoom screen, there is a place, you'll see a chat box and also a question and answers box. You can enter your question in either of those places. And at the end of the session, we will be taking your questions. Please don't be shy, ask your questions. We want to make sure that you leave today's session with a good understanding of how this program works and how it can benefit you. Now, let me share who will be joining us today and sharing information about this program. First of all, Lucy Brehm. Lucy is the Associate Director of the Environmental, Natural Resources, and Energy Law program, and she will be discussing the courses and structure of online classes, an overview of faculty, and alumni success, among other things. Craig Johnston will be here. He's a professor of law at Lewis and Clark, and probably one of your teachers in this program. He'll discuss, among other things, the benefits of online learning and how the discussion boards work and the lectures, kind of giving you an overview of the online platform. And we're also going to talk about our current cohort of students, so you can learn a little bit more about what makes up the Lewis and Clark Environmental Law program online. And speaking of students, we'll also hear from one of our current students. Megan Silverman is here, who will go over important topics such as, hey, what's it like as a student in this program, and you know, time commitments and just expectations she'll talk about, and why you should choose Lewis and Clark. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, I'll be discussing the admissions process and we'll be taking your questions. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Let's get to the main events. I am happy to bring you Lucy Brehm. Take it away, Lucy.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today and for your interest in Lewis and Clark's online LLM program. As you know, we are ranked #1 in the US, and we're very proud of the courses and the faculty and opportunities that we provide to our students. So thank you for coming here today and for your interest in joining us. The online LLM degree is structured in such a way so that the entire degree can be completed online with a choice of high quality environmental law courses taught by our own Lewis and Clark professors. The courses each include modules with pre-recorded lecture segments and discussion questions, quizzes, etc., so that everything is all available to you in one online platform where you access the lectures, participate in discussions, and complete other assignments. Final exams, etc., are also all done online. Some courses do have papers that you would be submitting, and then other courses you may be doing things like blog posts or other assignments. But again, everything is accessible through the online portal. Each professor has office hours online, or you can also contact them directly. And Lewis and Clark really prides itself on access to the law school professors and the interaction between our faculty and our students. We have technical support available 24/7, and staff whose assignment is to make sure that you are able to keep up in class, answer any questions, and make sure that you keep on track. For US students, you will complete 26 credit hours in order to complete the degree. There are three required courses. There is administrative law and environmental law. And then you're also required to take 2 semesters of a course called Emerging Topics, which I will discuss a little bit about that class later. For international students, you're required to complete 28 credits. Again, you are required to take environmental law, but not administrative law, although that's a course that we highly recommend because it's very important to understanding environmental law in the United States. Another course that we have specifically for international students is a course that I teach called An Introduction to U.S. Environmental Law and Legal Studies. And this is a seminar that we've created in order to help international students learn the concepts and some of the skills that will be necessary to complete the degree. And then international students also take the 2 semesters of emerging topics. You can complete the degree in 4 semesters, but you have actually 3 years to complete it. And for the remainder of those 26 or 28 credits, you can choose from the variety of courses which we will be offering online. Every semester, we are offering at least 2 3-credit courses plus emerging topics. And then if you would like to study something that isn't covered specifically by one of the courses we're offering, you can do an independent research project, which is a paper under the supervision of one of our faculty members. This summer, we are offering administrative law and environmental law. Both those courses will be offered this summer. It will be a little bit different structure in the summer than the regular semester. A regular semester runs for about 13 weeks and then time for exams, etc. In the summer, the courses are going to be shortened, so they will each be 7 weeks. They don't run at the same time. Administrative law will be May 26th to July 10th, and environmental law will be June 16th to July 31st. But there's still time to apply and to start this summer if you're interested. Do recognize, though, that that is a more intensive way to complete those courses because they will be done over 7 weeks rather than 13 weeks. This fall, we have some additional really great courses we're excited about. Professor Chris Wold will be offering International Environmental Law. Professor Melissa Powers is teaching our Climate Change, U.S. Law and Policy course. I will be offering the Introductory U.S. Environmental Law seminar for international students. And then Professor Rolfe will be teaching Emerging Topics, which is a 1-credit course specifically designed for LLM students. And then in spring, Professor Johnston is going to be offering Hazardous Waste. We'll have Emerging Topics again, and then another 3-credit course. There's a lot of flexibility in how you would complete the degree. Some people start off taking maybe starting just with Emerging Topics, and then in another semester add additional classes. So depending on how busy you are at work or with your other obligations, you can really make this, this degree work for you in terms of how many credits you take at a time. And again, you have 3 years to complete the degree, but you can complete it in 4 semesters. At this time, I would like to introduce you to Professor Craig Johnston, who teaches our environmental law seminar, and again is going to be teaching hazardous waste next spring. And he will give you some insight from his perspective, having now taught online for us several times, and a little bit about what his course is like and what some of the benefits are for you as a student in accessing this online platform.
Thank you, Lucy. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I hope you are all healthy and otherwise well during these crazy times. I am going to talk primarily about how we structure the environmental law class here. But first, let me give you a few words about my background. I graduated from law school a long time ago in 1985 and went to work for EPA in its Boston office. It's called Region 1 in EPA speak. As an enforcement lawyer, and I worked there for 3 years, primarily on hazardous waste matters, both Superfund type cleanups and regulatory enforcement cases. I then wanted to get back to Portland, Oregon, and so I took a job with a large law firm, Perkins Coie, which represents both private and municipal clients, both in terms of just giving them advice and in terms of defending them sometimes in litigation. And I worked there for 3 years. And then in 1991, I was lucky enough to be hired onto the faculty. And so I am just now completing my 29th year at Lewis and Clark. It goes by quickly, I can tell you that much. But in any event, I have had the joy of teaching our environmental class every year since I've been on the faculty, and now once online as well. I also teach our summer environmental law class when we have it in person. So this is a course that I dearly love. In terms of how we structure this class, as Lucy mentioned, there's a timing difference. In the summer format, it's only 7 weeks, whereas in the regular context, it's 13 weeks. But you can just think of that as sort of, twice the preparation, if you will, during the same time period if you do want to take advantage of the summer schedule. But we have structured the class so that there are 13 modules, one going along with each week. And we cover a number of different statutes. We start with the Clean Water Act, and in particular, what's called the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Program. And then when we finish that, we turn to the Clean Air Act. Those are the major two pollution control, command and control statutes that we cover in the online classes. And then after that, we talk about regulatory enforcement. All of our major environmental statutes have enforcement provisions that are pretty similar to each other. And so as opposed to trying to cover this separate on a statute by statute basis, we find it's much more efficient just to talk about general enforcement principles and how they apply in the environmental context across the board pretty much. There are some differences between two statutes and we point some of them out, but in the main, they pretty much track each other pretty closely. After we get done with that, we then turn to the Superfund statute, more formally known as the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act. As you may know, that's sort of EPA's main cleanup program. States can use it also, even private parties can use it to address contaminated sites that have been created, regardless, in fact, of when they were created. It's one of the very few statutes in our realm that is retroactive. It doesn't matter whether the disposal activities occurred before the statute was passed or not. That's sort of the pollution law part of the class. Again, the two main command and control programs, the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act, some enforcement, and then Superfund. When that's done, we turn to sort of the natural resources area, and there we focus on 3 different programs. First, the National Environmental Policy Act, which is a somewhat unique program in that it's primarily procedural, and it relates really only to the federal government and to private projects that specifically require some kind of federal approval. When we're through with that, we then turn to the Endangered Species Act, and then finally to the Wetlands Program, although that's actually not the end of the class. After we get through all of the statutory programs, we then have one module that focuses on how regulatory takings play out in the environmental context. That is, when does the government need to compensate people because its regulatory programs have imposed too great a burden on individual landowners. So that's the substance of our overview class. It pretty much tracks our day fall class here at Lewis and Clark, with the exception that the fall class here is a 4-credit class, not a 3-credit class. And so there are a couple of things that we're able to cover in that course that we aren't here. But the purpose in both contexts is the same. The purpose is really to provide you with sort of an overview of the major environmental programs, and then to allow you to sort of use that as a springboard into upper level classes. So if you will, you sort of get to see the whole forest, and then you get to decide which trees you want to look at more closely perhaps. And many of our students go on to focus either in the pollution area or in the natural resources area or in the energy area, but very few actually take very many classes across the board. In fact, almost all environmental lawyers tend to specialize in one area or the other of those 3. The last thing that I want to talk about is, in addition to the lectures, as Lucy mentioned, we do have a discussion board, and that really serves 3 primary purposes. First, there are some discussion prompts that go along with each module. These really are just questions that are designed to get you to think a little bit more deeply about the materials than you otherwise might. We don't intend for students to write law review articles about each of these topics. We're really thinking only about sort of take 15 or 20 minutes and tell us what your main response is to this discussion prompt. So we don't intend for it to be that burdensome time-wise, although, again, if you're doing 2 or 3, that's going to take you a half an hour or maybe even up to an hour per week to work on those. Once you have submitted yours, you can then look at others from other students. And actually, in my class at least, you're tasked with commenting on a certain number of them as we go along. That's to get you to engage with your peers. And I get to see all that as well. And so each week, I will provide a few days after everyone's done some feedback, particularly on where I think students may have gone down a surprising path or perhaps an incorrect path. In other words, we use this as an opportunity to make sure that people are understanding the materials properly. It doesn't really matter what position you take on the respective issue, whether you agree or disagree with a particular court's opinion, for example. But what matters is that your analysis is sound in how you go about agreeing or disagreeing. So that's really, one other aspect of it is that there are some knowledge checks, they're called, in each week as well, where there are 15 or so multiple choice or true false questions. You take those and then you immediately can see what the answers are. So that's intended, obviously, just to go one step beyond the discussion prompts and get into maybe some greater level of detail on some points and to see whether your reading of the cases or the other materials has been correct. Again, just all intended to enhance your understanding of the materials as a whole. So that's basically how that all works. As you know, this is a typical law school format. At the end, there's an exam. As Lucy mentioned, during the regular semester, there's an exam. There's actually a study period and then an exam. In the summer context, we use sort of the last half of the 7th week for students to be able to study for and then take the actual exam. That's it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Craig. I'm going to talk a little bit about who our students are and what some of the feedback is that we've heard from them. We accept students every semester. So we had students start in the fall and then additional students start in the spring. And then we have more students starting this summer and next fall. So far in what I will call our first cohort for 2019-20, we've had approximately 20 students start the program, and they've come from really all across the country and around the world. We now have students from Norway, Australia, Costa Rica, etc. And we're finding that they're also coming from a variety of backgrounds and professional careers. We have people who are active duty military, private practice, people working in the government, nonprofits, etc. And some of the students are doing the LLM program in order to provide greater expertise in the subject matter that they're already working in or in environmental law. And then others who are using this as a springboard to really refocus their career. Either they've always had a long-standing passion for environmental law, but weren't able to take it in law school, or they just really want to find a different career within law and study environmental law. So in other words, there's all different reasons why people decide to do the LLM. And as Craig mentioned, the student feedback has really helped us shape the course and program going forward. We've heard from students that they appreciate the flexibility of being online and completing the degree without needing to move or uproot their families and careers. But it is an intense academic experience. It's a graduate law degree. There's significant reading and discussion. For some people, the online format is actually better than in person. I've had a student tell me that it was the best academic experience they've ever had because they have time to think before responding, they have flexibility in completing the work, etc. So yes, a wide variety of responses, and we have learned a lot, especially after fall semester. And I appreciated that Professor Johnston talked about time expectations for answering discussion questions, et cetera. So I hope that gives you a little bit better idea about how this actually works. And now you will hear from one of our current students, Megan Silverman, and she'll be able to give you the real scoop on things and tell you probably a very realistic view of what it's like for her. She is planning to graduate this fall, so we're very excited. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan. I graduated from law school in 2011 at the University of Chicago. And after law school, I went into the e-discovery field. So I was in that industry for about 7 years. And then I decided that, I really wanted to refocus my career and do something that I was passionate about. And I've always been passionate about environmental law. So that's why I decided, okay, now's the time to switch tracks before it gets, 20 more years later and a little maybe later. So I looked at a lot of law schools for the environmental law LLM. And I was looking at in-person programs and online programs. But I kept coming back to Lewis and Clark because obviously they're the #1 program in the country. So, if you're getting a specialized degree, you want to learn from the best people and you want to go to the top school because that's probably where you will get the best education. And Lewis and Clark has been focusing on environmental law for 20, 30 years. They've had this focus a lot longer than most other programs. So they really have focused on the program. They focused on really hiring the best faculty, and their clinics have also done the best real world work. And then when Lewis and Clark was offering the online program, I was like, this is great. I live in Miami, Florida, so Portland is quite a trek from where I am now. I decided that, this would be the best fit for me because I wouldn't have to move and I would still be getting the best education possible. So I started the program last fall, and, it is a little bit more of a time commitment than I initially kind of expected. But along with that, it's also a much better learning experience. So I would say every class you take that's around 3 credits, for me, it's about 10 hours a week for a 3-credit class. So you take 7 credits. That would be around 20 hours for both of the main courses. It was energy law and environmental law in the fall. And then around 6 hours every 2 weeks for the emerging topics 1-credit class. So, while it is a pretty decent time commitment, it is flexible in that, you can log on every other day or, maybe 2 or 3 times a week and see what your assignments are and start on them. And also the teachers are flexible with deadlines. If you talk to them ahead of time and you have a big deadline at work or you're going on vacation, they've always been, very flexible with time commitments. If you can't get the paper the same day, that it's due, but just talking to them beforehand. And that's another thing about the program. It's really easy to get in touch with the professors. You can send an email in the morning and by the afternoon, generally you'll have a response. And they always take a lot of time to answer questions. And a lot of them are even available and prefer if you just give them a call. So, they really, really care about their students and want to make sure everyone is experiencing the best possible learning that they can. So one thing about the program is in law school, sometimes you can slack off until the very end of the course and then cram for the final. And that's one way of learning, but I don't really think it's necessarily the best way of learning because it doesn't give you time to have the material really sink in. But in this program, you really do have to plug in and learn every week. And you're always building on what you've learned the week before. So it is more work on a weekly basis than a lot of law school programs, I would say. But at the end, you don't have to sit in the library for a week straight per class, 24 hours around the clock trying to learn the material, because honestly, by doing the discussion posts and responding to your fellow classmates every week, you're really learning. You get what's going on. And even Professor Johnston in environmental law, he said that, the online class learned much better than his in-person class because every week they were writing about the subject. And if you're writing about it, it's really going to make you think about it a lot more than just speed reading the cases. So, I feel like I've learned a lot in probably a better way than law school. And yeah, the teachers, are great. They're really flexible and approachable. And Lucy is great. The other dean, Janice, is really amazing. Whenever you email them, they always get back to you very quickly. I'm actually going to graduate in the fall, and I'm taking 2 summer classes this summer. So hopefully I'll see you guys in some of my classes. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Megan.
Okay.
I'm going to go through these next couple slides a little bit more quickly because I want to leave lots of time for questions at the end. And if after this is all over, please feel free to email me or call me directly, and I'm happy to give you more details about anything you might be interested in. So I'm going to talk about career services and alumni. As Megan mentioned, we've had an LLM program for a long time, for 25 years. And our program, our environmental law program, was started 50 years ago. So we have alumni, both LLM and JD alums, really in all over the world and in many practice areas. And our first cohort of online LLMs will start graduating in fall 2020, like Megan. Our career services offices is very dedicated to helping students, including all the online LLM students, with career planning and job searches. There are online tools available for job searches. And our career services staff, as well as Janice Weiss, who's the Associate Dean, and myself, also offer mock interviews, networking contacts, and other personalized help. So we really do take it seriously to help our students find jobs. And I just wanted to briefly go over some. You'll see some on the screen, people who have completed the LLM degree fairly recently and what they're doing. And I just thought I'd just mention a few others. One of our LLM grads is the Chief Attorney Advisor for the Southwest section of NOAA. We have a staff attorney alum with the National Wildlife Federation, and he's also the director of Michigan Law's Environmental Law and Sustainability Clinic. One of our alums is the Vice President of Environmental Strategy at Energy Corporation. We have someone who's a staff attorney at Advocates for the West, Deputy Environmental Counsel for the U.S. Pacific Fleet in Hawaii. That's one of our military alums. And many of our alums also are environmental law faculty. So again, while this online LLM degree is a new venue for offering, we've had this LLM degree for 25 years and our program's been around for 50 years. So we have a very strong alumni base and a wonderful career services office. So yeah, going on to the next slide, I think a lot of this has already been discussed, but I'll just briefly review it again. Why choose Lewis and Clark? We are a very well-known program. We have an excellent reputation. Most of our online classes, as our in-person classes, are small. There are some exceptions. Administrative law is very popular this summer, and so there are going to be quite more students in that than some of our others, but most of our online classes are less than 15 students, so they're quite small. We have, as you know, you can see from meeting Professor Johnston, we have fantastic professors. You're able to network with other students. We have these passionate alumni around the world, and you can access this degree without moving and have the same high quality experience as you would on campus. And then I'm just going to talk real briefly about our faculty and tell you just a little bit more about them. You've already met Professor Johnston, and he gave you a little bit about his background. I just wanted to point out that the professors who are teaching in our online degree are the same professors who teach on campus. So all the people you see on this screen are teaching the same courses on campus. So, you know, we're not farming this program out to somebody else. You're getting the same experience as residential students. Professor Powers, Professor Melissa Powers, who will be teaching energy law, who has taught energy law and will be teaching climate change, US law and policy this fall, is the founder and director of the Green Energy Institute at Lewis and Clark Law School, on top of all the other amazing work that she does publishing and teaching. Professor Dan Rolfe, who teaches emerging topics, and he's the co-founder of the law school's Earthrise Law Center, which is an on-campus environmental litigation clinic. And he's also teaching natural resources law and science. And just, I promised to tell you a little bit more about emerging topics. It's a 1 credit, you take 2 semesters of it, 1 credit each semester. It's kind of a hot topics course. You talk about emerging environmental issues, regulatory issues, maybe current court decisions that have come out. And so it's all just LLM students. So it sort of serves as a gathering place for everybody in one class. So that's very nice. And then Professor Wold, who's teaching international environmental law this fall, is the founder of our International Environmental Law Project here at Lewis and Clark. He practices and is immersed in international environmental law issues, things like Conference on Trade and Endangered Species, climate change negotiations, Convention on Migratory Species. So as you can see, these are really people who are experts in the field that they're teaching, and we're really excited about this lineup of courses and faculty for this next year. And now I think Greg is going to tell you more about how to apply for the program.
Yes, thank you, Lucy, and thank you, Megan. And really enjoyed this information you shared. And once again, want to remind everyone that once I'm done sharing this information about the admissions process, we are taking your questions. And I see we've got a couple fired up already, but you can either type those in the Q&A box or the chat box, and you can just hover your mouse at the bottom of the screen and you'll see those pop up. So what does it take to apply to this program? I want to go over the requirements first of all. Number one, you do need to be a graduate of an accredited US or international law school. So basically you need either a JD or an LLB or its equivalent. If you have not graduated from a law school, you're not eligible for this program. So even if you have, say, a bachelor's degree that's related to law or policy, but you don't have a law degree, you do need that JD or LLB. We do need to see an excellent academic record, strong legal research and writing skills. As has been mentioned several times here today, writing is a big part of this. You'll be doing that. So, that's definitely something that we do look for. This seems rather obvious, but I always like to point it out, to have a genuine interest in environmental law. And I would say not just an interest, but really a passion, which I'm guessing all of you that are here probably have that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be spending, 45 minutes with us on a Wednesday afternoon. But definitely a passion and a love, and that's one of my favorite things about talking to students in this program, is I can really tell that this is something which is extremely important to you. You want to make the environment a better place. And I love hearing student stories about why they want to do this program. And also want to mention, actual bar membership is not required. While you do have to have a JD or an LLB, you don't have to be a practicing lawyer at the moment. You could be a recent law school graduate. Maybe you've been a lawyer at one time and you're just not practicing at the moment. So, we've, again, as Lucy shared, we've seen people from a variety of different areas, and both here in the US as well as internationally, coming from a variety of different backgrounds, who have joined our program. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the next screen. So next steps. First of all, if you're interested in this program, first step, of course, is to submit your online application. And I have very good news for you. You do not have to go through LSAC. You went through that one once before. You don't have to take the LSAT again. We have a very simple online application. It'll take you maybe, I don't know, 10 minutes to complete. So not a bad process there at all. And here's what we need along with the application. If you are an international student, we'll need either a TOEFL or an IELTS score. With a TOEFL, we do need a minimum score of 100, IELTS minimum score of 8. Or if you can provide other evidence of English proficiency and fluency, then we may not need to see those scores. We do need a statement of interest. And this is really where you can tell us about your background, why you're interested in the program, why you're passionate about this. If there's a particular area of environmental law that you want to focus on, tell us your story. Tell us who you are and why you want to do this. And also we want to hear, you know, what's your goal? How would you like to see this LLM impact you in your career? Want to see a current resume from you, your transcripts from your JD or your LLB, and 1 to 3 letters of recommendation. If you don't have all of those things together, you can simply submit your online application and get those rest of those documents to me separately, because, you know, sometimes it may take a little while to get transcripts, or, you know, you have to write your personal statement. And I do want to mention too, as has been mentioned a couple times before, we do have summer classes. And even though those summer classes are starting in about around 3 weeks or so, there is still time to get your application in, still time to get admitted, you know, see if you earn a scholarship, all of those kinds of things. There is time for that. So if you're interested in the summer semester or the fall semester, or even this coming spring, we do encourage you to go ahead and submit your application. And generally speaking, once we receive your application, we're usually pretty quick in providing an answer on if you've been admitted. Usually within a couple weeks, you find out an answer. Okay. Let's move on to the next screen. And this is where we want to get to your questions. Again, please don't be shy. I know that we've covered a lot of information here today, but I'm guessing that there's probably a couple things you may be wondering about. So please do submit. And let's go to our first question here. And just to remind you, you can go to either the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen or the chat box. If you don't see those, just hover your mouse on the bottom of the screen, you will see them come up. So the first question is, would you recommend, and this is probably for you, Lucy, would you recommend the LLM for students that are not going to work in the US, or would you say it's focused only on US law?
Well, that's a great question. And I will tell you that we have many international students who come to Lewis and Clark and complete the LLM and then go back to their country and work. So, but more precisely, yes, the LLM and the subject matter is, for the most part, very focused on US law. Obviously, in international environmental law, there's more, more of an international focus. But we are finding and have found that students still want to come and see how, you know, it works in the United States, that it helps them in their practice in their country, or perhaps they're interested in bringing some of those ideas to their country. And we certainly learn from what's going on in other countries as well. But the straightforward answer is yes, the degree is very focused on US environmental law.
All right, thank you very much. Another question has come in asking about scholarships. This is a frequent question that we do get, and also about the cost of the program. So I want to cover that information for you as well. Let's talk a little bit about scholarships first of all. Scholarships are available on a partial basis, and so generally what happens is the scholarships are based on merit and need. So we want to first of all, know about your need for a scholarship. So we ask you to write us a letter which tells us about why you would like a scholarship. And also in that letter, because it is also based on merit, tell us about some of your academic achievements, professional achievements, and that will be considered by the admissions committee. Anything else you want to add about scholarships, Lucy?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up and for the question. That's exactly right. I did want to point out two things that touch on the scholarship issue as well. One is that all the admissions applications come directly to the environmental law program at Lewis and Clark. So we are making our own decisions. You are not going through the JD admissions process. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just want you to understand that we are directly selecting the students to be in the program. And so Janice Weiss, who's the associate dean, myself, and faculty make that decision. We also make the decisions about these tuition scholarships. And the way those work is that if you provide us information about merit and need, and we are able to offer you a scholarship, it reduces your tuition. And so it's direct, it reduces the cost to you of doing the program. Tuition for this next year is $14.95 per credit. And so depending on how many credits you're taking in a particular semester, that would be your tuition for that semester. And then again, the way the tuition scholarships work is that if you get a 15% reduction or a 20% reduction, that directly reduces tuition in that manner.
Great, thank you. And I will mention that because we had a question specifically about costs for international students, the tuition rate is the same, still at $14.95 per credit. The difference is for international students, you will take one extra class. So it's a 26 credits if you're in the United States, 28 if you are international. And as Lucy said, that's $14.95 per credit hour. Okay, had a couple other questions come in. Let's take a look at this. I'm assuming all the course materials are online, but can you also obtain them pre-printed? Or if we wanted them printed, would we need to print them ourselves? Lucy or
yes, sure. Yeah. Well, it varies according to professors. Some professors do provide a lot of the material, the written material, but most courses will also have a casebook. So for example, for administrative law and environmental law, there's a casebook that you'll be using. And you can order those online through, I've seen them on Amazon. You can get them used or new, or some even offer 14 days of online access until you receive it. And then, yes, if you want something printed, you would print that yourself. So I hope that answers your question, but please feel free to follow up if there's more that you would like explained.
And typically, kind of along those lines, in terms of, and maybe Lucy, this is for you, or perhaps Megan, in terms of books, what kind of requirements are there?
Well, Megan, why don't you answer that since you're in the thick of it right now?
Sure. Emerging topics doesn't require a book, so that Professor Rolfe will just provide all of the reading materials on a weekly basis. Environmental law required a pretty popular textbook, as well as admin law. Energy law did not have a textbook, I don't think. I think Professor Powers. So I would say so far about half of the classes have required a textbook, and I actually rented the books rather than purchase them. So I think I paid maybe $70 to rent the book. So it's, I would say less on books than in law school.
Great. Another question on scholarships. What's the highest percentage of scholarships that we offer?
What I would say is that we do not offer 100% tuition reduction, unfortunately. I wish we could do that. And so there is no particular set amount. It really depends on what your need level is. But I know people are really interested in there, and we have very many qualified people who would love to be able to waive all tuition costs, but we don't do that.
Another question came in. How many credits are most courses? Sounds like sometimes they are variable. Is that correct?
Yes. So on our online program, most courses are 3. So for example, environmental law, administrative law, international environmental law, climate change, all of those courses are going to be 3 credit hours. The class I teach for international students is 2 credits. So that's, but that's sort of in a class by itself. If you're a US student, you won't be taking that class. And then emerging topics is 1 credit. So in general, all classes are 3, except emerging topics, which is 1, but you take 2 semesters of it. So you end up taking 2 credits of emerging topics.
Great. I'm going to put out another call for maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and we're about at our time here. One thing I wanted to talk about is that as Lucy said, we do have active duty military students in this program, and certainly we're happy to accept any military benefits that you have, and love to welcoming students from the military into our program, of course. Any other questions that anybody can think of? All right, I'll give you
to hop on what you just said, Greg, thank you. We do have several students also who are using their military education benefits to great use. I know maybe it varies, I don't know all the details, but I know that we have students who are able to cover their tuition with their military benefits.
All right. Well, it looks like I'm not seeing any other questions come in at this time. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. Ooh, one just came in. All right. Do you accept transcripts from LSAC though the application is online? No, you don't. The transcripts you can send to me. So basically the question is, do the transcripts from LSAC, can those be accepted?
Well, actually, we do have some people who they're doing a lot of different things, and so their transcripts are on LSAC. So I think we are able to go in there and get those if you let us know they're in there. But one more thing on transcripts, and that is, you can submit an unofficial copy. Say you happen to have a copy or you printed out a copy, you can scan and email that to Greg, or upload that on the online application system. That's fine. We will need your formal, transcripts directly from your school when you start the program. But in terms of the admission process, if you happen to have a copy of your transcript, that's fine with us.
All right, and one more question here. My school does not give copies of transcripts at all. What can be done?
Well, we will go, if you submit it through LSAC, we'll go into LSAC and get it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us here today. It was a great turnout today, and thank you to Lucy and Megan, of course, and to Craig for joining us today. And want to encourage everybody to reach out if you do have additional questions. You can email me directly. You'll see the email on your screen there, envlawllm@lclark.edu. Also, you can reach me directly at 503-867-8058. And, more questions may come up. So please feel free to reach out. We will answer those for you quickly. And again, want to encourage you to submit your application. We still have time for your summer classes if you'd like to get in there. And we would love to see you all join us at Lewis and Clark. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.